How about Myles Garrett and Aidan Hutchinson on the same team?
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, we've got a Monday edition here of Locked On Lions right here in the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Dery with you. Today is a Monday, February 3rd into Tuesday, February 4th. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, thank you to our everydayers that are out there that watch or listen to the podcast daily. Got a few new everydayers, some that have contacted me. Been trying to give as many hellos as I can to those of you that are out there, which I appreciate. Sean Redmond is the man. NFC North Trash Talk on Facebook. Dan Jokic as well. Thank you. The legendary Erica Mattis. Erica posted some video today on Facebook that just cracked me up as she was putting air in her tires. She's a great person and a buddy. Got to give a shout out to Erica. Tom Taylor. We were talking some Briggs Stadium yesterday at the Lena Fest. Tom Taylor loves old school Lions talk. And a special shout out to the owner of the Stadium Market in Ann Arbor, Vernon George. I was scrolling through Reels earlier today. And I saw Vernon George in an interview did with Channel 4. This guy's a season ticket holder for the Lions, owns the Stadium Market in Ann Arbor. He's a great story. He could not go to the playoff game against the Vikings because he had to work. He takes his family, and they did a little story on him. So, hey, Vernon, thanks for being a Locked On Lions follower. Today's podcast is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. We're chasing down Jim Nagy. We're going to want to get in front of Jim at some point this week to wrap up the Senior Bowl. He, of course, is the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. We'll get Jim on here at some point this week. I'm working on that right now, friend of the program. Spencer German's going to join us later from Locked On Browns. The big news of the day, which I think we have to dive right into right now, is that Myles Garrett, who's arguably the best defensive player in the NFL, who may win Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL for the third time this year, is on the market. Myles Garrett penned a very nice and very classy, basically goodbye to the Cleveland Browns today. Sent it out to the media and said, hey, it's been great. I love Northeast Ohio, love the Browns fans, but I want to win. And I've asked for a trade and requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. As many of you know, I grew up in Cleveland, was, WAS in all caps, a Browns fan. I was in the stadium in 1987 when John Elway went 98 yards in the infamous drive. Yes, yours truly was sitting in section 37 upstairs watching that absolute debacle. It's also there watching Rich Carlos's kick go wide left when they said it went through the uprights. I'm not bitter. But I follow the Browns for forever. They're a dumpster fire. And Myles Garrett is doing what Myles Garrett should do. He's about to turn 30. And he's like, get me out of here. Who's quarterback of the Browns? Anybody know? No. Who was the quarterback the last couple of years? Deshaun Watson. They're a mess. And I thought it took a lot of class to just go, hey, look, I'm going to write this letter. I'm going to put it out publicly. I'm ready to be done. And I thought he did it with class. Took a little bit of a dig at GM Andrew Berry, who the other day made a comment that we want Myles to go from Cleveland to Canton and never leave. And Myles today said, it's not about going from Cleveland to Canton. It's about winning a Super Bowl, which I thought was a little bit of a dig at the general manager. But he's had enough and wants out of Cleveland. What have we been talking about here since the Lions lost to the Commanders a couple of weeks ago? Detroit must get better at rushing the passer. You got Lee McNeil, fantastic interior defensive lineman. You got Aidan Hutchinson, arguably as good as any edge rusher in the game. But the top of the mountain when you talk about edge rushers in this sport is number 95 in the orange and white and brown, and that's Myles Garrett, and he's available. So first things first, you'd sit here and say, well, wait a minute. He wants to win. The Lions win. He wants a chance at the Super Bowl. Lions can give you that. And the Lions can probably afford him right now because they don't have an exorbitant amount of contracts. They're not way over the cap. And he'd be a perfect fit on the other side of Aidan Hutchinson. Hutch and Myles Garrett together? Whew. I mean, come on. This is a no-brainer, right? Well, there's a lot that goes into it. Myles Garrett has 2 more years left on a contract that's paying him in the low 20s in terms of millions of dollars. He's going to want a new deal, and that new deal is likely going to be $35 to $40 million a year. Aidan Hutchinson has now been in the league a handful of years and is due to have his rookie contract, expire, and he's going to want a new contract. And you don't think Hutch isn't going to want to get Myles Garrett money and vice versa? Could you possibly pay 2 edge rushers on the same team $40 million apiece? A lot of good perspectives on this today, including, man, I love when I cue this stuff up and it's not there. Al Karsten writes for Pride of Detroit. I have said this before and I'll say it again. I go on prideofdetroit.com every day. It's a fantastic website. We are friends with Jeremy and Eric and Al and Ryan and everybody over there. They do a great job. Al Karsten posted earlier today on social media that the Lions will likely soon be making Aidan Hutchinson the highest paid defensive player in football, currently Nick Bosa, 5 years, $170. Quote, Myles Garrett would likely cost 2 to 3 first-round draft picks. We'll get to that in a second. Garrett will also want a new contract, paying him $35 million a year. Again, Garrett has 2 more years left. The Lions were just forced to play 43 defensive players. 30 players started a game this season. This is a quote from Al Karsten. Trading multiple first-round picks and paying Garrett an extension will not only further dilute that depth, it'll also hinder their ability to re-sign a majority of Kirby Joseph, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Frank Ragnow, and Alex Anzalone, among others. Do yourself a favor and realistically realize that it's highly unlikely that Brad Holmes is a serious contender to trade for him, draft, develop, extend, reward from within. End quote. That's one man's opinion. Al Karsten from Pride of Detroit. Let me mix and match a little bit about what Al is saying. Number one, you're on this pod, you're watching Locked On Lions or listening to hear from me, Matt Dery. All right, I'm not just going to read. I read what Al said, and I think what Al wrote was spot on. So I wanted to include it. Number one, go get Myles Garrett. GMN, get Myles now. All right, I'm all for it. I'm for going for it right now, and putting the fear of God in the opposing quarterback. You imagine all the bells and whistles. Oh, Caleb and Ben Johnson. Caleb this and Caleb that. Imagine Caleb Williams having a stare down the loaded gun, barrel of the loaded gun of Myles Garrett on one side and Aidan Hutchinson on the other. Oh, and by the way, throw in Aleem McNeil. I'm all for it and voting for the Lions looking into this and saying, we got a window of 3-4 years. Let's do it. All for it. Al's points are valid, though. If you bring in Myles Garrett, you can say goodbye to Jamison Williams. You can probably say goodbye to DJ Reader and Graham Glasgow this year. You could probably say goodbye to Alex Anzalone when that contract is up. You're probably only going to get to keep one of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, right? Ragnow, I think they would make work to keep him here. Obviously, Penei Sewell is just re-signed. Kevin Zeitler re-signing probably is out the window if you trade for Myles Garrett. And I believe that what the market would bear for Garrett would be, of course, a first-round pick. I'm not necessarily agreeing that it would take 2 to 3 first rounders. He's about to turn 30. And don't start talking to me about Luka and AD, because these people that cover the NFL say, that was like a Joe Burrow for Lamar Jackson trade. No, it's not. Stop. That's so stupid. They're 2 different sports. That makes no sense. That's not the equivalent. I think a first rounder, a 2 and a 3 would probably work. And I'm going to throw a player in this trade if Brad Holmes is dialing up Andrew Berry at this hour. sure they've talked already, but you know what I mean. I'm going to do that coming up next, right here on Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. It's simple. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write a job description, then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame, which I have on my LinkedIn, to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so we're talking about this Myles Garrett situation. The Browns, defensive end, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, all everything. Probably Defensive Player of the Year again this year in the NFL, who just worked, by the way, with the legendary Jim Schwartz the last couple of years, wants out. He has demanded a trade from the Browns. He has announced it to the world via a letter that he thanks Northeast Ohio, thanks the Browns fans, but it's time to leave. Not his words, mine. I said it before the break. I believe that we are in a place where the Lions have to be in the mix here. I've seen Buffalo. I've seen Atlanta. I've seen some other teams that would have interest. A lot of teams that have interest in Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, by the way, is not being traded in the division. I can tell you the Browns are not going to send him to Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or Baltimore, for that matter. A lot of people are talking about multiple first-round picks. I think you can get them for a first, a second, a third, and probably a player. What do the Cleveland Browns need? Browns need a quarterback. And guess what? The Lions have one for them. Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker is buried behind Jared Goff and may never play. But he's 26 already, 25, and 24, 25. Again, I'm not doing my homework. Just bear with me. He's that vicinity. He's not 21. Hendon Hooker's like 24, 25, and is sat and waited, of course, injured with the ACL. This year was the backup for most of the season. Then when Teddy Bridgewater came aboard, they slid him to number 3. The Browns need a quarterback. Now, there's talk in Cleveland that they could go after Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr or Sam Darnold because Deshaun Watson's basically done. Jameis Winston's not the answer. Dorian Thompson-Robinson isn't the answer either. So you want to make this move and you want to go after him, the Browns may ask about Hendon Hooker. And you do it if you're the Lions because Hendon Hooker does not play. Yes, he's a nice security blanket for you. Yes, he's a young, developed backup quarterback that you drafted and developed, but the Browns would be playing him right away. And he doesn't cost a whole heck of a lot. So that could be an idea here. The reality of the situation, though, if you're Brad Holmes, is this goes against what Brad Holmes has been saying when asked about free agency. Brad Holmes likes to draft and develop. If you trade draft picks to the Browns, you don't draft. You've got Myles Garrett and you sit there on draft night. You trade a first rounder and a second rounder, you're not drafted until the third round. Now, Brad does come from the Les Snead tree in LA and with the Rams, where for many, many years, Les Snead didn't have a first round pick. Some of that was due to the Stafford and Jared Goff trade. So I still don't think that maybe necessarily it is going to be realistic that the Lions do this, but I think they've got to pursue it and at least look into it, because I think when you're going for it and when you're as good as the Lions are, what is the difference maker in a lot of these games? It's disrupting the quarterback. The Lions did not disrupt Josh Allen, and he went off on him late in the year. They did not disrupt Jaden Daniels. He went off on them in the playoff game. It's that simple. Now, there's going to be a lot of cap ramifications. There's going to be a lot of players that you cannot re-sign, as we talked about before. But maybe if you, Carlton Davis would be another one you probably can't bring back. But you know what? If you've got Garrett and Hutchinson, maybe you don't need the best corners in the league. We'll see on all of this, but it kind of does go against what Brad Holmes believes, which is drafting, developing, and re-signing your own. Not trading for a guy, and yes, he's got 2 more years left at reasonable money in the $20 million range. But no, that money is going to be $35-40 million a year. And is it realistic to have 2 of those players? And would Garrett, we don't know this yet, would Garrett want a long-term extension the minute he lands wherever he lands? That's another question that I'm sure will come up as the days go on. Very quickly, Jared Goff, the Lions quarterback, Lions quarterback, was the MVP of the Pro Bowl games yesterday. I didn't catch any of this. I saw a little bit of this tug of war, and then I saw Eli Manning push Peyton Manning into the ball pit or whatever it is, where the players fell into when they were doing the tug of war. It's like going to one of those bounce house places where you jump on the trampolines and you jump into the foam stuff. But Jared Goff was the MVP, the offensive MVP of the Pro Bowl games, and was also on Sirius XM NFL radio being interviewed down in Orlando. Our friends at Pride of Detroit caught this as well and was asked about Ben Johnson leaving for the Bears. And Goff said, quote, "He's a hell of a coach. He's a guy that's made a ton of difference in my career. I'm obviously a big fan of his. I was joking with him. I wish he didn't have to be in our division, so I didn't have to try to beat him twice a year. But no, he's going to do a great job. Hopefully not too good, though, with us being in the division together. I'll always be a fan of his. We'll always have a good relationship," end quote. Then he was asked about John Morton, the new offensive coordinator. Remember, it was Dan Campbell that said Jared Goff would have a say in who the next OC would be. Quote, "We were together in 2022. Morton was an assistant on our staff. He's done it before," Goff said. "He's been a coordinator before, has a lot of experience in our league, been around a lot of great coaches. I'm excited to work with him and see where we can go," end quote. Lions have yet to introduce John Morton yet, or even Calvin Shepard officially, other than on social media, but they haven't had any kind of a press conference yet. I talk to Lions fans all of the time, and I get there's an anger there about Ben Johnson going in the division, going to Chicago and everything else. But it is what it is. I think the minute Matt Eberflus was fired, I do think in Ben Johnson's mind, that's the job he wanted, and that's the job he knew he was getting. But I don't think it played any role in the Lions losing to the Commanders, and they weren't prepared or anything else. Lions scored 31 points. The offense wasn't great, but I don't think Ben Johnson was like, "Oh, I'm ready to go to Chicago, so Jared Goff's going to throw a pick six." I don't subscribe to that theory at all. All right, more on this Myles Garrett situation with Spencer German, the host of Locked On Browns. We will do that coming up next. Spencer's a friend and one of my teammates when I fill in on 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. We'll talk to Spencer German about this deal and what the Browns would want from the Lions coming up next. And Locked On Lions brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here. We're a week away, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Oh my gosh. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out. All right, looking at the big board here this weekend and the big game. What about selecting more for Travis Kelce on receiving yards or more for a quarterback's passing yards like Jalen Hurts? Do it all up at PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And Locked On Lions today brought to you by Gametime. Looking for tickets to anything, big event, whatever it is, maybe last-minute tickets for that big game next week, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports venue, whatever it is. Indiana, Michigan basketball this weekend. I'll be there down in Bloomington. I'm going to get my tickets on the Gametime app with Gametime Picks. The app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I got deals, as one man used to say. Gametime Picks for now is the best. Curated deals make it super simple to find tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. And the seat view feature is a game changer. You know exactly where you're sitting before you hit the buy button. All right. Plus, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even bigger? Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, my man Spencer German, host of Locked On Browns, joins us now with a big bombshell. Of course, we've talked about already on the show today, Myles Garrett wanting out. Could Detroit be a destination? Spencer, great to see you.
Matt, always a pleasure, man. Excited to be to make my Locked On Lions debut with you.
Yes. Look at you, part of the network. You and I worked together at the Fan in Cleveland. Great to see you. Great to have you with us. All right, so what's been the reaction? How real? I mean, is it 100% that this is happening? Is it a contract move by Myles? Does he want to win? What's going on?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people bringing up, especially I think outside of Cleveland, the idea that this is maybe just like a contract ploy for Myles. But my biggest thing is, if that's all it was, he could have done that without making it a public letter the way that he did. Like he clearly took the time to do that. And I also think like he already played that card a little bit when he talked about at the end of the season that it was going into week 16 against the Bengals, was when he first made those comments about, maybe I could see myself playing somewhere else. And we were all kind of caught off guard by it. That sort of felt more of the ilk of, okay, he's just kind of setting the stage for, hey, my contract's coming toward an end. I want to be the highest paid defensive player, all that type of stuff. And it sort of seemed like, okay, the Browns just, pay him handsomely and they'll move on. This feels more like this is for real. Like he is truly wants out. He wants to go chase Super Bowls somewhere. And obviously we can speculate about like what that means. And we know the Browns stance on that. And Andrew Berry has been adamant that he's not trading Myles Garrett, but those things can change depending on what the offer that comes in is. And we know, I think like part of this could just be like a ploy by the team to up the price tag. Like, hey, we're really digging our feet on this. We're not trading him if you want him. You got to give us like a Godfather offer. So, yeah, I mean, you asked for the reaction though. I mean, fans are beside themselves. I think it's kind of it's been sort of a shocking day. I called it on the latest episode of Locked On Browns. I think this is rock bottom for the organization since the team returned in '99. I mean, truthfully though, like
how many rock bottoms can they have? My God.
Well, 1-31 was bad, but like at least you knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel for this is like you built towards players like Myles Garrett being here for championship runs, and now that's completely gone. And it's like, okay, you're starting over again. And there's not really a lot of direction without Myles Garrett being part of this picture. Do you trust Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski to get this ship righted? I don't know. So fans are pretty, I think, stunned and hurt by their favorite team today.
What should the Lions prepare? Let's say they were interested in Myles Garrett, and putting Myles Garrett opposite of Aidan Hutchinson would be unbelievable. But
yeah,
what's a realistic package from Detroit to Cleveland to get Myles Garrett in your mind?
Yeah, so I know Diana Rossini put out an interesting sort of scenario. She said she had talked to some GMs around the league, and like the idea was a first and a second or a first and 2/3. And that feels, based on what we were kind of anticipating, sort of low for Myles Garrett. And I get he's going to be rounding into his age 30 season here pretty soon and all those things. But this is a player who's, reigning defensive player of the year, is at least in that conversation for the award again this year, I would think. And is still playing at such a high level, a generational talent. Like I'm guessing that wouldn't do it for the Browns if they were going to actually trade Myles Garrett. Maybe there's a player that you could throw in there, But I'm thinking they at least want like 2 firsts out of this in some capacity. If they go through with it, they decide, hey, we're willing to do this. We're going to sort of hit the reset button. I think 2 firsts makes the most sense. Or, a first and a player that is going to be like a starter for you, something along those lines.
I've got the name for you.
Okay.
What about Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, I don't hate that. And listen, the Browns got to get creative here, obviously, because they need to figure out how they can sort of quickly fix this roster, especially if it doesn't include Myles Garrett. And like how they can kind of get this thing back on track. And I'm at least intrigued by somebody like Hooker as a team that needs a quarterback, obviously. There's some other options out there that are sort of veteran targets that this team is probably going to look at and go after, but I don't hate that. If you're trying to sort of, my thing when it comes to the quarterback position, Matt, has been for the Browns, no answer is a bad answer at this point. Like they just got to kind of try some things. Clearly the Deshaun Watson ship has sailed. And whether that's a veteran and a rookie or, just going all in on a rookie, they have to sort of try any avenue that's at their disposal. So I don't hate that move. And if you paired that with a couple picks or a first and a couple other picks, I think that could maybe be something that's intriguing to the Browns. But yeah, I think the starting price for the Browns, I would imagine, has to be somewhere like the two first range.
Final thing for Spencer German, Locked On Browns. You've been around Myles Garrett. You've covered him. The Lions have a certain type of player that they want. And obviously Myles Garrett's the best defensive player in the game. But in terms of being a Lion and having a good attitude and not messing around in the locker room and messing up chemistry, how's he been? Because I thought the letter today at least was semi classy how he handled it.
Yeah, I would. He's never been a real problem in the locker room. You can go back to the Baker Mayfield days, and it's been well reported that those two kind of had a little bit of a rift between each other. I think some of that stemmed from the night of the helmet, the infamous helmet incident against the Steelers. Baker had like a post-game interview where he said, we got to be better, we got to be smarter, and those are the types of things players obviously want you to keep in the locker room. They don't like those things kind of being public when you're calling each other out like that. So I think it started there, and it kind of spiraled into some other stuff, and that obviously led to Baker getting traded like he did. But for the most part, his teammates speak of him glowingly. He's always been a good soldier in that locker room. He's always been a good soldier with his team. I don't think there'd be any issues or chemistry issues with when it comes to Myles Garrett. He's about winning. That's obviously what the Lions organization is prioritizing right now. So yeah, if that were to come to fruition, I do think a place like Detroit would be an awesome fit. I honestly think like a place like Detroit would be a place he could go where Browns fans would find it easy to root for him as well, because we know the Lions have kind of been a feel-good story in the league the last couple of years as well.
Spence, great to see you, buddy. Thanks so much for the time.
Matt, appreciate it, man. Anytime you need me, I'm here for you. So appreciate you having me on.
Back at you, Spencer German with us. Locked on Browns, latest on Myles Garrett. We're chasing down Jim Nagy for the rest of this week at some point on a Monday. Locked On Lions.